Some places collect more than just belongings. They collect the people who can't bear to leave them behind. The StorageMax facility hummed with fluorescent persistence at 11:47 p.m. Sarah's footsteps echoed against polished concrete as she made her way down Corridor C, past rows of identical orange doors. Unit 247. She'd been putting this off for weeks. Boxing up Mom's things had been hard enough without having to face them again. The keypad beeped, accepting her code. But when she grabbed the handle, it didn't budge. She tried again, pulling harder. The metal door felt heavier than she remembered, like it was reluctant to open. On the third attempt, it finally gave way with a prolonged screech that seemed to echo longer than it should have. Smell hit her immediately. Not musty or stale like she'd expected. Damp, dight. Everything felt damp. Her grandmother's quilt, the photo albums, even the wooden jewelry box, all of it carried a humid weight that hadn't been there 3 months ago. She ran her fingers across the quilt surface. The fabric felt different somehow. Thicker, like it had absorbed something more than moisture. Sarah pulled out her phone's flashlight. The overhead bulb in the unit flickered erratically, casting unstable shadows across the carefully stacked boxes. She'd labeled everything in her neat handwriting: kitchen items, books, photos 1985-2010. But now some of the ink looked smeared, as if someone had handled the boxes with wet hands. She reached for the nearest box, Mom's clothes, and paused. It was sitting in a different spot than she'd left it. She was certain she'd placed it against the back wall, but now it sat closer to the door. Maybe the storage staff had moved things around during maintenance. That had to be it. The fluorescent light above continued its irregular pulse. Bright, dim, bright, dim. Each time darkness fell, the shadows seemed to shift slightly. Sarah told herself it was an optical illusion, but her skin started to crawl anyway. The air felt thick, almost like breathing liquid rather than gas. She grabbed the first box and lifted. Christ, it was heavy. Much heavier than when she'd brought it here. Had she really packed this much into one box? The cardboard sagged in her grip, corners damp beneath her fingers. As she set it down by the door, she could have sworn she heard something settle inside it. Not the rustle of fabric, but something more deliberate, like contents rearranging themselves. The facility's air conditioning kicked in with a mechanical wheeze, but instead of cooling the space, it seemed to make the air even thicker. Sarah wiped sweat from her forehead and looked back at the remaining boxes. There were more of them than she remembered packing. A lot more. Something was wrong here. She couldn't say what exactly, but every instinct told her to work quickly and get out. The sooner she loaded everything into her car, the sooner she could leave this place behind forever. The second box refused to budge. Sarah pulled harder, bracing her feet against the concrete floor. It was like the cardboard had grown roots into the storage unit's floor. When it finally came free, she stumbled backward, nearly dropping it. The weight was impossible. She'd packed these boxes herself, knew exactly what was in each one. This felt like it contained laid bricks. She set it down and stepped back into the hallway to catch her breath. That's when she noticed the other units. Several doors along the corridor hung slightly ajar, just an inch or two. Enough to reveal glimpses of contents inside. Furniture draped in plastic, stacks of boxes, the gleam of something metallic. She was certain those doors had been closed when she'd walked past earlier. The fluorescent lights stretched endlessly down the corridor, creating a rhythm of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. She checked her phone. 12:23 a.m. Had she really been here for over half an hour? It felt like minutes. Back in her unit, Sarah tried to make sense of what she was seeing. The space looked deeper than before. Much deeper. When she'd rented the unit, it had been a modest 10x10 square. Now, it seemed to stretch back into shadows her phone's flashlight couldn't penetrate. The back wall had simply disappeared. She approached the darkness cautiously. Her light beam revealed more boxes, more furniture, items she didn't recognize. A rocking chair she'd never seen before. A trunk with tarnished brass corners. Photo frames containing faces of strangers. None of this belonged to her. but it was all mixed in with her mother's possessions, like they'd grown together over time. The boxes nearest to her started to feel warm under her touch. Not sun-warmed or heated by electronics. This was a different kind of warmth. Organic. Alive. When she lifted one marked winter coats, she could feel the contents shifting inside, but not with the random tumble of fabric. The movement was purposeful, resistant. Sarah's hands began to shake. She forced herself to keep moving, grabbing another box, then another. Each one fought her. Each one weighed more than physics should allow. The cardboard felt damp and slightly yielding, like skin that had been underwater too long. She looked at her phone again. 12:23 a.m. The same time as before. The digital clock hadn't moved. She shook the device, checked the battery. Full power. But the time remained frozen, as if the facility itself was holding each moment captive. The air grew thicker. Breathing became work. The fluorescent light above her unit began to flicker faster, creating a stroboscopic effect that made everything appear to move in jerky, unnatural motions. In the intermittent darkness between flashes, she caught glimpses of movement in her peripheral vision. Boxes settling. Shadows reaching. Sarah grabbed her purse and headed for the exit, leaving the boxes behind. She needed air. She needed space to think. But as she reached the end of Corridor C, she found herself facing Corridor C again. The same orange doors. The same numbers. The same flickering lights. She was still here. Still trapped in this endless hallway that led only back to itself. Sarah ran. Her footsteps echoed in rhythm with the flickering lights above. Corridor C, Corridor C, Corridor C. No matter which direction she chose, every hallway led back to the same orange doors, the same numbers, the same impossible loop. Her breath came in shallow gasps as panic closed around her throat. Unit 247 stood open, waiting. The boxes inside had multiplied. What had been a modest collection of her mother's belongings was now a maze of cardboard and furniture stretching back into darkness. But worse, much worse, was what she could see in the other units now. The doors hung wide open, revealing interiors that defied the building's architecture. Each unit extended back impossibly far, filled with the accumulated possessions of countless lives. Decades of belongings, generations of storage. And sitting among the boxes and furniture, she saw them. People. An elderly man in a cardigan, sorting through photo albums with infinite patience. A young woman, organizing children's toys that would never be played with again. A middle-aged couple folding and refolding the same clothes over and over. Their movements were slow, repetitive, hypnotic. They didn't look up when Sarah passed. They were part of the collection now. She pressed herself against the corridor wall, trying to understand. These people, they were the other renters, former renters. They'd come to collect their belongings and never left. The facility had kept them, the same way it was trying to keep her. Man? The voice came from behind her. Sarah spun around to find a maintenance worker in coveralls, his name tag reading Jerry. His smile was too wide, his eyes too bright. Having trouble with your unit? I need to leave, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. The exit. Where's the exit? Oh, you don't want to leave yet, Jerry said, his smile never wavering. You've got so much work to do. Your things need organizing. They need care. They need you. Sarah backed away from him, but her shoulders hit something soft. She turned to find her mother's quilt, pressed against the corridor wall, somehow free from its box. The fabric wrapped around her arms with gentle insistence, warm and familiar and wrong. Don't fight it, Jerry said. Everyone fights at first. But look how peaceful they are now. Quilt tightened around her wrists. More belongings began to emerge from the units. Clothing that walked on invisible legs, jewelry boxes that sang lullabies, photo albums that fluttered their pages like wings. All of her mother's possessions, reaching for her with desperate affection. Sarah's purse strap grew heavy around her shoulder, the leather digging into her skin. Her phone, her keys, her wallet, everything she'd brought with her was joining the conspiracy to keep her here. The facility didn't just want her mother's things. It wanted her too. No, she whispered, then louder. She tore free from the quilt, leaving fabric in her grip. Sprinted past Jerry's unchanged smile. Ignored the hands that reached from every open unit, the voices that called her name with her mother's voice. At the end of the corridor, she saw it, a red exit sign, flickering but real. Sarah slammed into the push bar with her full weight. The door opened onto cool night air and blessed darkness. Sarah sat in her car for 20 minutes before her hands stopped shaking enough to start the engine. The StorageMax facility loomed behind her, its windows glowing with normal fluorescent light. Regular light. Nothing wrong with it at all. She'd left everything behind. Every box, every piece of furniture, every photograph and keepsake that remained of her mother's life. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, but not as heavy as the certainty that going back was impossible. Whatever that place was now, it wasn't just a storage facility anymore. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and empty roads. Sarah kept checking her rearview mirror, half expecting to see orange doors reflected in the glass. But there was only darkness and the occasional pair of headlights. Her apartment felt different when she returned. Smaller somehow. Emptier. She moved through the rooms, touching familiar objects. Her coffee mug, her favorite chair, the painting her mother had given her years ago. Everything felt less substantial than before, as if part of their essence had been left behind in that corridor. Sarah poured herself a glass of wine with trembling hands and sat at her kitchen table. She tried to rationalize what had happened. Stress, grief, fatigue. Any combination could cause hallucinations. The facility probably had ventilation problems. Carbon monoxide leak, maybe. There had to be a logical explanation, but her purse felt lighter on the counter. Her keys seemed smaller in her palm. Even her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked somehow diminished, as if she'd left part of herself behind in Unit 247. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jerry's smile and the gentle, purposeful movements of the people who'd become part of the facility's collection. She wondered how long they'd been there. She wondered if anyone had noticed they were missing. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. "Dear valued customer," it began. "Your storage unit payment is coming due. As a reminder, StorageMax is committed to keeping your belongings safe and secure. We understand that sometimes items become attached to their storage environment, and we're here to help facilitate that natural process." Sarah deleted the email immediately, but it reappeared in her inbox 5 minutes later. She deleted it again. It came back. "Your belongings are missing you." The subject line read now, "They're waiting patiently for your return." She blocked the sender, changed her email password. The messages kept coming, each one more personal than the last. "Your mother's quilt remembers your touch." "Oh, the photo albums want to share their memories again." "Yours. Unit 247 feels so empty without you." "No, tiny shimmy." Sarah closed her laptop and backed away from it. But she couldn't stop thinking about her mother's things, alone in that horrible place. Couldn't stop picturing the quilt, soft and familiar, waiting for her return. Couldn't shake the feeling that she'd abandoned something precious. The pull was subtle at first, just a nagging thought, a sense of unfinished business. But as the days passed, it grew stronger. The empty spaces in her apartment seemed to expand. Her remaining possessions felt hollow, temporary. Sarah found herself driving past the facility on her way to work, just to check, just to make sure it was still there. The orange doors looked so ordinary in daylight, so innocent. Unit 247 was waiting.